My name is Avery Carter. I'm 27 years old, and the day my life changed didn't look like a movie. There were no fireworks, no swelling soundtrack, no dramatic slow motion hug from a long lost parent. It started with a picture of me in an itchy graduation gown, standing in front of a beige wall, holding up a flimsy rectangle of paper like it was a shield. My diploma. I remember holding the phone with both hands as I posted it, not because I was nervous about the photo. It was fine. I'd seen worse angles of myself in elevator security cameras, but because this finally felt like something they couldn't ignore. 6 years of night classes. 2 jobs that smelled like despair and over-microwave burritos. A brain fried on data systems and analytics. Somehow, I'd crawled my way to a degree. Don't care about it, I told myself as I hit post. It's just a picture. But of course it wasn't. It was me saying, hey, I made it through without you. I put the phone down on the tiny kitchen counter of my equally tiny apartment and tried to act casual. I washed a mug that didn't really need washing. I reheated leftover noodles. I checked my email. I absolutely did not, under any circumstances, pick up my phone every 90 seconds to refresh the notification bar. The post got exactly 1 like. No fire emojis, no "so proud of you" from my mother. No "smart queen" from my cousin. Just 1 lone thumbs up from Grandpa William, whose Facebook profile picture was still cropped wrong and whose comments always ended with "Love Gramps," like he was sending a formal letter. At first I laughed. Then I sat on the edge of my bed and felt that laugh dissolve into something else, something tight in my chest. I scrolled through my cousin Natalie's profile out of morbid curiosity. She'd posted a blurry mimosa once with the caption "Brunchin" and gotten 114 likes. One of the comments said, "Such a ray of sunshine." It was from my aunt. My diploma? Radio silence. Except for Grandpa. He didn't just like the post. 10 minutes later, my phone lit up with his name. I remember staring at the caller ID, that familiar number, the way my thumb hesitated over the green button like I needed a second to steady myself. "Hey, Gramps," I answered. "Avery girl," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice, that warm, raspy chuckle. "Told you numbers were smarter than people." I snorted. "Is that your way of saying congratulations?" "It's my way of saying I knew you'd do it," he replied. "I have seen how hard you work, even when no one's looking. That's worth more than any fancy campus with ivy on the walls." That word, "knew," hit different. No one else in my family ever talked about me in certainties. I was always a footnote, a background extra, the one who helps with the Wi-Fi or works nights somewhere with computers. They didn't know the details, they didn't care. But he did. For 6 years, my life had been a loop. Gas station shifts that started at sunset, the place smelling like burnt coffee and loneliness. Warehouse shifts on weekends, hauling boxes past managers who treated forklifts with more respect than people. Then night classes at the local tech college because it was all I could afford. I chose data systems and analytics partly because it was practical, partly because numbers don't roll their eyes at you when you say you're tired. That diploma wasn't just paper. It was proof that I hadn't disappeared just because my family stopped seeing me. Still, when my phone stayed stubbornly quiet after Grandpa hung up, the old stories came back. "Maybe you're overreacting. It's just social media. They're busy. You're too sensitive." I carried those thoughts like extra weight into Thanksgiving. I walked into my mother's house with the diploma in my hand. Literally. It wasn't supposed to be a flex. I'd just grabbed it from my car to drop it off at my apartment later, and it felt safer in my hands than left in the back seat. My uncle spotted it first. "Oh, hey, you graduated?" he said, squinting like it was written in hieroglyphics. "Yep," I replied. "Last month." "What for again?" "Data systems and analytics." He paused. "So, like spreadsheets?" I smiled, the polite kind. "Sure, the kind that tell billion-dollar companies what to do." He blinked at me in that way people do when they realize they've underestimated you but aren't ready to admit it. "Cool, cool," he muttered, then turned back to his plate like I'd just announced I'd won a free coffee at 7-Eleven. My mom didn't say anything at all. She took the diploma when I offered it, barely glanced at it, then set it on a side table under a stack of mail. "Pass the peas, please," she said to someone else, her voice smooth, unbothered. That was the theme of the night. I was there. They just edited me out in real time. I took my usual seat, at the kids' table. I wasn't a kid. I paid my own rent. I filed my own taxes. I fixed my own sink with YouTube tutorials and stubbornness. But there I was, at the wobbly folding table, while my cousin Natalie sat up front near my parents, laughing brightly about her latest brand collab with a candle company. Lifestyle content, she explained, flipping her hair. People just love my authenticity. I speared a piece of dry turkey and wondered what it felt like to be rewarded for existing loudly instead of existing quietly. Nobody asked about my classes, my job, or what I planned to do now that I had the degree. No one said, "We're proud of you," or, "Do you need anything?" The closest I got was my mom tilting her head and saying, "You still doing those night classes?" Like I hadn't just handed her physical proof that they were over. But Grandpa noticed. He always did. When I was getting ready to leave, he shuffled over in his worn cardigan, smelling faintly of aftershave and old books. "Walk me to the car?" he asked. "Of course," I said, slipping my arm through his. Outside, the air was sharp and cold. Our breath puffed out in little clouds as we crossed the driveway. He opened the passenger door slowly, then stopped and turned to me. "Here," he said, pressing a plain white envelope into my hand. His fingers were warm and slightly shaky. "Just a little something." "You don't have to." He clicked his tongue. "I know I don't have to. Open it later. And keep building, Avery girl." Inside, later that night, was a check for $250 and a note in his crooked handwriting. "Don't stop building. Love, Gramps." I sat on my bed holding that note, the TV buzzing faintly in the background, and felt more seen by one shaky sentence than by my entire family in years. The months after graduation blurred into routine. My new job in analytics paid better, sure, but the family dynamic didn't update with my salary. Same group chats I wasn't in. Same birthday cards addressed to Aubrey or Amber. Same polite distance from my mother, like I was a neighbor's kid she liked well enough. The only thing that stayed rock-solid consistent was Grandpa. He called every week, always at weirdly precise times. 7:03 p.m., 6:58 p.m. If he missed a call, he'd text something like, "Slight mishap, currently horizontal, don't worry, pain meds are lovely. Love, Gramps." We talked about everything and nothing. His garden, his feud with his neighbor over a stolen plastic flamingo. Some random historical fact he'd read that day. He always slipped in questions about me, though. "How's the new job? They treating you right? You eating more than just noodles now? You sleeping at all? Or you still wrestling with spreadsheets at midnight?" He didn't just ask, he listened. Which is why I knew something was off the week the calls started stacking up. It began with a missed call, then 2, then 5 in 1 week, all from family members who hadn't dialed my number in years. Maybe a decade if you didn't count the occasional mass Merry Christmas text with my name spelled wrong. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe someone added me to a group call by accident. Maybe there was news about a wedding, or a baby, or another unnecessary candle brand launch. Then I opened social media and saw it. An old photo of Grandpa and Natalie. She was 5, holding a balloon and looking vaguely confused. The caption read, "Missing our weekly brunches with Grandpa. Can't wait to see you again soon." Weekly brunches? Last I checked, she couldn't tell you if Grandpa lived in a condo or a cave. My stomach twisted. I called him that night. He didn't answer. 2 days later, he finally called back. When I picked up, his voice was the same. Still joking, still calling me a very girl. But there was something underneath it. A thinness. A drag between sentences. A soft hiss in the background that I realized, after a moment, was an oxygen machine. "Just a little cold," he insisted. "Nothing dramatic. These tomatoes are more dramatic than I am." But as he coughed 3 times in the middle of telling me a ridiculous story about his neighbor's new lawn gnome, I knew. Something was wrong, and everyone else had suddenly remembered he existed. By the end of that week, it was like my family tree had grown notification badges. My aunt posted a throwback of Grandpa smiling at some picnic 10 years ago. "Best grandpa in the world. Family is everything." This from the same woman who once told him to get with the times because he mailed her a birthday card instead of sending money through an app. Natalie doubled down. Another post, another caption, this time a collage of blurry pictures where Grandpa was mostly in the background, out of focus. "Always said I was his sunshine. Miss you, Gramps. Can't wait for our next brunch." I stared at the screen, the fakest nostalgia dripping from every emoji, and felt something hot and bitter crawl up my throat. Grandpa had once told me, "That girl talks about herself so much, I'm surprised she doesn't invoice people for listening." But now she was his sunshine. I didn't comment. I didn't like. I just closed the app, grabbed my keys, and drove to his house like I did every Thursday. His place was a small, 1-story home with peeling paint and a garden that looked like it was always halfway between chaos and miracle. The flamingo statue leaned sideways like it was in on a joke no one else understood. The porch light flickered when I rang the bell. I didn't wait for him to answer. I had the key. Inside, the house smelled like it always did. Pipe tobacco from 15 years ago, lemon cleaner, and something faintly like old paper. The TV murmured from the den, tuned to a channel that only played documentaries and commercials for medications with alarming side effects. He was in his usual chair, blanket over his knees, glasses perched on the end of his nose. There was a small plastic tube at his nostrils now, leading back to the oxygen machine I'd only heard over the phone before. "Hey, Avery girl," he said, voice a little thinner but still warm. "You're early. The lemon loaf's gonna get jealous, you know." I lifted the bakery bag in my hand. "Please. The lemon loaf knows I'm loyal." He chuckled. "Good. It needs to be taken down a peg." We settled into our Thursday ritual. I sliced the cake. He asked me to make the TV stop shouting. I fixed his phone, which had somehow turned Siri British. "Why does she sound like an audiobook now?" he complained. "You asked her to be British, remember?" I said. "I don't remember that," he grumbled. "They should have a setting called Old Man Friendly." "You already use it," I teased. "It's called Loud Mode." He laughed, but it broke into a cough halfway through. I watched his shoulders shake, my hands unconsciously curling into fists at my sides. When he finally caught his breath, he waved me off. "Don't look at me like that," he said. "You'll wrinkle your forehead before you're 30. "Too late," I said, trying to keep my tone light. Night shift aged me 5 years. We talked about the neighbor's new lawn decoration, some absurdly tall metal heron that clashed horribly with the flamingo. He asked about my job, and I told him about a project where my report saved a client from making a very expensive mistake. He listened like it was headline news. At some point, while he was telling me about a book he'd reread for the third time, my eye caught something on the coffee table, a yellow legal pad. There were names written on it, some underlined, some crossed out, arrows leading nowhere, notes scribbled in the margins. I wasn't trying to snoop, it was just there, loud in its silence. My gaze skimmed across it. Natalie's name, my aunt's, my mother's, and then landed on one line at the bottom, written in darker, more deliberate pen strokes. "Make sure it goes to someone who showed up." The words landed heavy in my chest. I felt him pause mid-sentence. "Avery?" he said. I blinked and forced my eyes away. "Sorry," I murmured, sliding the legal pad gently under a stack of old National Geographics like it was a sleeping animal I didn't want to wake. "Got distracted by the flamingo outside. It's listing to the left." He squinted at me like he wanted to push, then let it go. "That bird's always been dramatic," he muttered. I didn't ask. He didn't offer. But that line kept echoing in my head all the way home. Someone who showed up. A few weeks later, I noticed another new thing on his coffee table. A cardboard box, plain and unassuming, with a piece of tape across the top. In his crooked handwriting, he'd written, "To be opened." That was it. No date, no name. It was half open, like someone had looked inside and then thought better of it. I could see the edges of folders, a couple of envelopes, one of them thick and slightly yellowed. On top, there was a single loose sheet of paper with another note. "Don't let them fight over crumbs." My throat tightened. I didn't open anything. I didn't touch the folders. I just reached out, gently pressed the lid down, and slid the box a little farther from the edge so it wouldn't fall. When he woke up from his nap, he caught me glancing at it. "You saw the box," he said. It wasn't a question. "Didn't open it," I replied. He studied me for a long second, then smiled. This small, grateful, almost relieved smile that carved deeper lines at the corners of his eyes. "I knew you wouldn't," he said. We moved on, but later, when the tea was cooling between us and the TV hummed quietly, he spoke again, softer this time. "You know what I regret most?" he asked. I looked up. "That you didn't buy that giant metal heron to annoy your neighbor?" He snorted. "Tempting, but no." He set his mug down. "I regret letting them treat you like wallpaper." The air in the room shifted. "All those years," he went on, "you were always there, reliable, like the best coffee machine in the office." I arched an eyebrow. "You're comparing me to an appliance now?" "A very important appliance," he insisted, smiling. "The one everyone uses, no one thanks, and everyone panics about when it stops working." My own smile wobbled. "I should have said more back then," he admitted. "Should have called them out. But I can make sure the end is less noisy." There was a weight to those words that scared me. "Grandpa," I began. He shook his head. "No pity party," he said. "I hate pity parties. Terrible music. Then he took a deep breath and added, I want you to say something at the funeral. The word dug into my ribs. Funeral. What? I forced out. No, you're going to out-stubborn all of us. He ignored that. I want your voice to be the last one they hear, he said quietly. Not because you're loud, because you're honest. My eyes burned. I stared at the lemon loaf to keep them from spilling. I don't even know what I'd say, I whispered. You will, he replied. When it's time. Then he winked weakly. And don't make it boring. If I hear any cliches, I'll haunt you. I'll make the smoke detector beep at 3 a.m. every night. I laughed through a tear. That's evil. I raised the bar on petty a long time ago, he said. A week later, he was gone. No sirens. No dramatic collapse. Just a call from the hospice nurse while I was at my kitchen table eating cereal for dinner. He passed peacefully in his sleep, she said. He listed you as his emergency contact. Of course he did. My family didn't call that night. They called the next day. About the funeral arrangements. Not to ask how I was, not to share a memory, just logistics. The funeral felt less like a goodbye and more like a staged production. The chapel was decorated with white flowers and a giant screen at the front. A piano version of Somewhere Over the Rainbow trickled softly from the speakers. People I hadn't seen in years wore black, like it was a costume pulled from the back of the closet. They'd put together a slideshow. Grandpa in his Navy uniform, Grandpa holding a baby I didn't recognize, Grandpa at a barbecue, at a park, at Christmas. I recognized the angles. I recognized which ones were from my phone. None of them had me in them. Not one. I sat near the back, middle row, invisible in plain sight as usual. Natalie was front and center in a perfectly tailored black dress and a tiny fascinator on her head, like she'd confused the service with a red carpet event. When the pastor asked if anyone wanted to speak, hands shot up like it was open mic night. My mother went first. She read a poem I'd definitely seen on the first page of a Google search before, stumbling over a few lines for effect. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue she produced from a sleek clutch, like she'd rehearsed the motion in a mirror. My uncle followed with, William wasn't a perfect man, which is always a terrifying way to open a eulogy. He rambled about values and hard work, the same values he only remembered when it made him look good. Then Natalie glided up to the podium. Grandpa always said I was the light of his life, she began, pausing like she expected a collective murmur of agreement. He used to sneak me candy when Mom wasn't looking. He told me I'd do great things one day. She looked out at the crowd, eyes shining just enough to catch the light. If there had been cameras, she would have known exactly where to face. I sat there, fists curled in my lap, feeling my heartbeat in my throat. No one had asked if I wanted to say anything. No one had mentioned that Grandpa had requested I speak last. But I had the note in my pocket, folded small, edges already soft from my thumb, tracing them over and over. To the one who showed up, you may not be the loudest in the room, but you are the one I trusted most. Speak last, let them hear it, and then walk away smiling. When the last relative stepped off the podium and the pastor started to close the service, I stood up. He blinked, surprised, then gestured. Of course, please come forward. Heads turned. A few faces twisted in confusion, like they were trying to place me. Natalie tilted her head, the corner of her mouth twitching, like she'd just realized the coffee machine could talk. I walked to the podium, feeling every step. My hands shook, but not as much as they had when I posted that diploma photo. This felt different, bigger, final. I unfolded the note slowly. My name is Avery, I began. My voice sounded steady in the microphone, even if my heart was hammering. Some of you might remember that. A few ripples of awkward laughter, mostly silence. I wasn't the loudest person in the family, I continued. I don't have a podcast. I don't do brand deals. I don't post my grief with filters. Someone shifted in their chair. Somewhere near the front, Natalie stiffened. But I was there, I said. Every Thursday, I brought the lemon loaf. I fixed his phone. I listened when everyone else talked over him. I took a breath and lifted the note. Grandpa wrote this for me, I said. Not for Instagram, not for applause, just for me. My throat tightened, but I pushed through. To the one who showed up, who never asked for attention, who made my last years easier just by being kind. You may not be the loudest in the room, but you are the one I trusted most. Speak last, let them hear it, and then walk away smiling. The room went very, very quiet. I folded the paper carefully, slipped it back into my pocket, and looked out at the rows of glossy black fabric and carefully curated grief. "Thank you, Grandpa," I said softly. Then I turned away from the microphone and walked down the aisle before anyone could clap, before anyone could try to turn this moment into theirs. I didn't come for them. I came for him. I thought that was the last surprise he'd left me. I was wrong. The will reading was scheduled for the following Tuesday at a downtown lawyer's office that smelled like leather, old carpet, and disappointment. The kind of place where fluorescent lights flicker and the receptionist looks like she's seen every kind of family meltdown imaginable. They called it a small gathering. It wasn't. Every cousin, uncle, aunt, estranged half-relative, and random plus one who'd only met Grandpa twice showed up. They wore black suits that still had the price tags tucked under the collars, as if mourning was a dress code they'd scrambled to follow. Someone's cologne smelled aggressively like pine and ambition. I walked in last. No dramatics, no grand entrance. I just slipped through the door and took the only open seat, wedged between Natalie, who immediately scooted half an inch away like I was contagious, and some cousin whose name I could never remember. The room buzzed. "Do you think he mentioned the house?" my aunt whispered, not quietly enough. "Bet he split it evenly," someone muttered. "He had liquid assets, I know he did," my uncle told his wife, as though insider information was about to earn him commission. Natalie reapplied lip gloss like she was preparing for a press conference. I sat with my hands folded in my lap, feeling the beginnings of a headache drum against my temples. No one looked at me. They looked at each other's kids, each other's rings, each other's potential slice of an invisible pie. The door opened. Mr. Penfield, the lawyer, walked in with the solemnity of a man who'd done this 100 times and knew exactly how ugly it could get. He had stiff posture, thick glasses, and a way of pausing between words that suggested he practiced his sentences in the mirror. "If everyone's ready," he said, clearing his throat grandly, "we'll begin." Silence fell. Everyone leaned forward. Phones disappeared. Even Natalie stopped adjusting her hair. He began with the smaller bequests. "To my daughter, I leave the family photo albums. May they remind you of the years we forgot how to talk." My mother inhaled sharply as though wounded, even though it was, by far, the kindest line he could have written. "To my grandson Eric, the set of woodworking tools you admired but never used. May you finally build something with your own hands." Eric blinked, offended and confused in equal measure. Then Natalie sat a little straighter, readying her best, gracious but glamorous expression. "To Natalie," Penfield read, "the decorative plates you always complimented. You're welcome to them. Please don't try to sell them online." A snort escaped someone near the back. Natalie's face flickered, first confusion, then horror, then a tight smile she'd clearly learned from watching too much reality TV. And then, Penfield paused. It wasn't for dramatic effect, although that's exactly how it landed. He adjusted his glasses, shuffled the pages, and read slowly, clearly. "And lastly, to the one who showed up." My breath caught. I felt the air in this room shift, sharp and electric. Penfield continued. "To the person who never asked, never boasted, never posted, who brought lemon loaf on Thursdays, changed light bulbs, and stayed after the rest of them left. Who didn't need applause to care, only a reason." He lifted his eyes. "I leave the house, the savings, the investment account, the car, the books, and the flamingo statue in the garden. Everything." The word everything rang like a dropped glass. Silence. Then, a gasp from my aunt. A murmured "no way" from somewhere to my right. Natalie's mouth actually fell open. Glossy lips parted like a broken hinge. I sat completely still, not out of shock, but because some part of me, deep down, had known. Grandpa had already told me without telling me. Penfield cleared his throat again. "And by name," he said, "I leave it all to my granddaughter, Avery Carter." Every head turned toward me. Every stare was a blade. Every breath in the room felt heavy, humid with disbelief. I just nodded once and said quietly, "Thank you." Nothing more. Not a gloat, not a smile, just acknowledgement. Because this wasn't a win. It was a responsibility. Penfield walked over and handed me a sealed envelope. My name was on the front in Grandpa's handwriting, a little smudged at the corner. "Read this when it starts to feel unreal," he said. I slipped it into my jacket. I didn't open it. Not yet. When the meeting ended, everyone swarmed toward the exit but avoided brushing against me, like I was radioactive. I felt their glares like heat on the back of my neck. Natalie brushed past me in a tight, controlled stride. She leaned in close enough for me to smell her floral perfume and hissed, "He barely even liked lemon loaf." I didn't answer, but I thought of a dozen replies. He liked me. That was enough. Outside, I took in my first full breath in half an hour. Cold, sharp, grounding. Then I heard footsteps. My uncle, of course. He crossed his arms like he was preparing for a duel. "You know this isn't right," he said. "Excuse me," I replied. "You manipulated him," he accused. "You isolated him from the family. He wasn't in his right mind. You took advantage." I laughed. Actually laughed. It startled even me. "I was the only one who showed up," I said. "That's all. No games, no strategy, just care." He opened his mouth, ready to unleash another accusation, then stopped. Maybe because he realized he had nothing. Maybe because he knew exactly how often he'd not shown up. Either way, he turned away first. They waited exactly 2 days before the barrage began. Not even 48 hours of mourning. "Natalie, hey Avery, just checking in." "Mom, I know you're overwhelmed right now, but we should talk. I'm proud of you." "Linda, Aunt, let's not let money tear the family apart." "Eric, can I borrow the car for a bit, just while I figure stuff out?" Then came the big one, a call from my mother. I stared at the screen for a long time before answering. "Hi, Avery," she said in a voice so sugary it could cause cavities. "Hi. I just wanted to say," she began, "that I'm really proud of you. That speech at the funeral was beautiful." "Uh-huh." And we were thinking, all of us, that maybe it would be nice to keep the house in the family. There it was. Her voice slipped from sweetness to determination. "You could rent out the rooms," she said casually. "We'd help, of course. Your cousins need a place right now, and Natalie's lease is ending." "So my inheritance," I interrupted, "is now a family hostel?" Silence. "You know Grandpa wouldn't want us fighting over things," she said softly. "He'd want us to come together." I almost laughed. "He literally called me the one who showed up," I said. "The will isn't a riddle. He was clear." "So you're really going to keep all of it?" she asked, voice small but edged, like she was positioning herself as the victim. "I'm going to honor him," I said, "by doing exactly what he asked." And I hung up. 1 week later, I moved into Grandpa's house. It felt surreal, the place I'd mowed lawns at as a teenager, now mine. The porch still had that creaky third step. The flamingo still leaned stubbornly left. The bookshelves were still overflowing. I didn't change much. I kept his things where they were. His favorite mug stayed on the counter. His chair, dented from years of reading, remained untouched. But I did add one thing, a lock on the gate, because 2 nights later, Natalie showed up. She didn't call, didn't text, just rolled into the driveway in her Prius, tote bag in hand. "I figured I'd crash for a few days," she said brightly. "Clear my head." I didn't open the door. I pressed the intercom button Grandpa installed 5 years ago, the one she'd once called Extra. "Hi, Natalie," I said calmly. "This isn't a hotel." Silence, then a tight, incredulous, "I'm family." "Yes," I replied, "and I'm the one Grandpa trusted." A beat. "That's the difference." I turned the camera feed off. She stood there for a long moment, long enough for reality to settle over her like cold water, then walked back to her car. I waited until the taillights disappeared down the street. Then I went inside, took out the envelope Grandpa left me, and opened it. One single line, written in ink that had smudged slightly where his thumb must have rested. "You earned this. Don't let them convince you otherwise." I read it 3 times. Then I folded it again, placed it on the mantel beside a framed photo of the 2 of us, and breathed for what felt like the first time in months. I didn't realize how hard they'd try next. The email arrived 2 weeks later. Subject line, family dinner, reconnect and heal. I stared at it for a full minute, waiting for my brain to confirm what my eyes already knew. Not spam. Not phishing. Worse. From Aunt Linda. To every relative who'd ignored Grandpa for months. CC. Me. I opened it. "Hi, Avery. We thought it would be nice to have a small family dinner. Nothing dramatic, no talk about inheritance, just togetherness. Grandpa would have wanted us to stay close. Hope you can come. Love, everyone. P.S. Bring a dish if you'd like." Attached was a flyer. A pastel pink header that read, "Rebuilding the Carter Family." Below it, a stock photo of strangers clinking wine glasses like they'd been photoshopped out of a commercial. Date, time, address. A line at the bottom in tiny font. "Please no outside alcohol." I snorted. Of course they planned to trap me sober. I placed my phone face down, leaned back in Grandpa's reading chair, and let the ridiculousness simmer. This wasn't about healing. This was a stage, and I was the reluctant lead they desperately needed to perform their redemption arc. That night, I stood in the kitchen he used to cook in, hands pressed against the old countertop worn smooth by decades of living. The lemon loaf pan hung by the stove. His kettle squeaked as it boiled. everything was exactly how he left it. On the mantel, his note rested against the picture frame. "You earned this. Don't let them convince you otherwise." I touched the folded edge with my finger. Then I looked at the folder I had prepared. Dates, screenshots, photos, receipts, literal and emotional. This wasn't revenge. This was clarity. Grandpa used to say, "You don't have to shout to be heard, just speak when it matters." The dinner was at Linda's house, the one that always smelled like potpourri and hidden judgment. I arrived exactly on time, not early enough to help, not late enough to be rude. The moment I walked through the door, I was smothered by a flurry of air kisses and fake warmth. "Oh, look who's here. We were just talking about you. You look so grown up." I gave each of them a polite, neutral smile. The kind you give to someone passing out credit card flyers at a mall. The dining table was set like it was Thanksgiving cosplay. 5 casseroles, a ham with a glaze that looked passive-aggressive, a salad no one intended to eat, candles, a centerpiece that was taller than I was sitting down. They'd even placed my seat halfway down the table, not the kids' end, not the adults' center, somewhere perfectly in between. Symbolic. Predictable. I didn't touch the food. I waited. It took exactly 17 minutes. Natalie stood up, wine glass in hand, chin tilted the way she did when she was about to deliver a toast that she believed would go viral. "We're so glad Avery could join us tonight," she announced, loud enough to claim ownership of my presence. "After everything that's happened, it's important to remember that Grandpa loved all of us." Several people nodded eagerly. "And maybe," she continued, "it's not too late to share, not just memories, but the future too." Translation: give us the house. Give us the money. Give us the comfort we didn't earn. The room buzzed with fake agreement. That was my cue. I stood up slowly, like a quiet wave rising. Then I placed the folder on the table. The room stilled. I opened it. One by one, I laid out the pages like cards in a deck. A printed list of every Thursday I'd visited Grandpa for the past 8 years. Screenshots of texts he'd sent me, jokes and updates and small slices of affection. Photos of us fixing the porch, eating lemon loaf, talking in his den. And finally, a screenshot of my diploma post. One like. From him. People shifted uncomfortably. My uncle squinted at the papers like they offended him personally. "This," I said, my voice quiet but unwavering, "is the difference between showing up and showing off." No one breathed. I turned to Natalie. "You posted 3 selfies during his funeral," I said. "One had a sparkle filter." She flinched. I turned to my mother. "You didn't visit him when he got diagnosed," I said. "You told me hospitals made you anxious." Her face pale, lips pressed tight. I looked around the table. "I'm not here to fight. I'm not here to forgive. And I'm definitely not here to give you a piece of something you didn't earn." My hands were steady as I closed the folder. You don't get to rewrite the story just because you don't like how it ended. The silence was a living thing, thick, stunned, breathless. I tucked the folder under my arm. Briefly, I eyed the ham. "Ambitious," I said quietly. Then I walked out the front door before anyone could speak. The drive home took me past the old park where Grandpa and I always stopped after grocery runs. The bench was still there, the one with peeling green paint and a wobbly armrest that clung on through weather and time. I pulled over, sat for a moment, let the night air settle around me like a blanket. My phone buzzed once, a text from Natalie. "You're being cold. Grandpa would be ashamed." I stared at the message for a moment. Then I opened my camera roll, found the photo of Grandpa's handwritten note, and sent it back. "You earned this. Don't let them convince you otherwise." Then I hit block. Not out of spite, but because peace isn't something other people give you. It's something you choose when you stop needing their permission. Spring came early that year. The roses Grandpa planted bloomed in colors I'd never seen from that garden before. Deep reds, soft pinks, one stubborn white blossom that stood out from the rest. The flamingo statue leaned the same way it always had, like it was raising an unimpressed eyebrow at the world. I kept the house exactly how he liked it, except for one addition. A small plaque in this garden, right beside the porch swing. Simple brushed bronze. Not flashy. Just 4 words. "Always rooting for you. Gramps." I didn't post it. Didn't tag anyone. Just stood there one morning, coffee warming my hands, listening to the quiet. That was enough. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived in the mail. Real mail. With a stamp and everything. It was from Penfield. Inside was a copy of an amendment Grandpa had written a week before he passed. "If Avery accepts the estate as written and continues to do what she's always done, please ensure the following is carried out. A donation to the local library in my name. A scholarship fund for trade students at the nearby community college. And one final gift, a bench in the park where we used to sit. Let her pick the quote. My breath caught. The bench. Our bench. I didn't cry. But I did sit down on the porch step, coffee in hand, heart full and trembling. A month later, I walked to the park. The old bench had been replaced. Fresh wooden slats, sturdy iron legs, the plaque already mounted. The quote, it was mine. The first text Grandpa ever sent me, back when I was 16 and unsure of everything. The world may never clap for you. Show up anyway. I sat down, leaned back, and let the quiet settle into my bones. A kid walked by with a backpack and a worn notebook. He paused, reading the plaque, then glanced at me. You picked that? He asked. Yeah, I said. It's good, he murmured. And he sat down at the other end of the bench, opening his notebook and writing quietly beside me. For the first time in a very long time, I smiled, the real kind, the kind that starts in your ribs and rises like light. This bench wasn't just a seat. It was a reminder that quiet doesn't mean small. Consistency matters more than performance. And sometimes the biggest victory isn't revenge. It's peace.